Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Episode 8 is here, and our esteemed guest, Mr. Steve NIGRELLI, former New York State Police Superintendent. It is an honor, Steve, and a pleasure to meet you. I've heard nothing but great things. I'm not going to give what I know other than what I've already described. Carm, I'll let you, because I know you know a little bit more about our guest, so go ahead, Mr. Gofredo.
Yeah, so just for an introduction, Steve NIGRELLI kind of became a friend of mine toward the end of retirement because some of my thoughts were I really didn't give a shit about certain things, and I spoke with him, and he's a very grounded guy, experienced leader, the leader of the state police, which for us when we were troopers was a huge thing. For those who don't understand, the superintendent of the state police is basically like a walking god that runs the agency. And during the time that he served, true leader, and I loved what he did. And just for an introduction, Steve, tell us about yourself and what your history is.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I subscribe, so I liked some of your episodes. Your episodes 7 and 6 were fucking great. I loved them. And on point. We'll comment about that later. Hey, you know what? I'm a kid from South Buffalo. My grandfather was a lieutenant in the Buffalo Police. My father was a detective sergeant in the Buffalo Police. My son Torrin is going on 7 years with the New York State Police. I'm 3 of 4 gens in law enforcement. You know, my uncles were all police officers. My immediate family. My brother Joe was with Indianapolis Police after a 25-year term or service in the military. My brother Mike was a captain in state police. My sister's was married to a trooper. He's now retired. And my brother Peter, my youngest brother, he's a commander of the Buffalo Police SWAT team. So
Jeez.
Christmas parties are a bunch of fucking cops sitting around a table lying about stories that they're taking ownership on, but we call each other's bluff all the time. I ended up doing I did a year in Buffalo Housing Police before I went to, which is a great eye-opening experience for anybody on the job. If you came from somewhere else that's super busy, and this is during the crack era, it was crazy. I mean, working in a tenement in the city of Buffalo, a series of tenements in the city of Buffalo, it was an eye-opening experience for me, and it really was a foundation for who I became as a law enforcement officer. I developed compassion for people who were stuck in their situation by economic and social economic means. But I also gained a huge distaste for bullies. And I kind of dedicated my life to eradicating the bullies in our society, as you two gentlemen have. And thousands of the men and women who wear our uniform have dedicated their lives to doing that. We're the anti-fucking bully police. Sorry about swearing, but they say
No, swear away.
Swear like a trooper.
No.
I'm that guy.
What I was going to say literally was if we end this podcast right now, the fact that you threw 4 F-bombs in that little statement there made my day, because that's exactly how I want this to be, just us talking about what's going on in society within law enforcement. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So I was blessed to go into I don't know if you know this, but the greatest academy session ever in state police history, the 168th session. It's noted. It's not even, it's like Pythagorean theorem. It's a proven fact. The 168 is the greatest ever. Don't even argue. In October 1st of 1990. And I served in Troop D. And then I was undercover in CNET for 5 years, both CNET Central and CNET Western. And I ended up getting a shooting, and it was probably in my best interest to go into the back room. Your pictures in the paper, it's not really a good idea to be an undercover anymore. So I worked the back room for a while in Troop A. Then I went from the back room into, then it was 9/11 happened. I went to counterterrorism, and then I made a lieutenant. And it was kind of weird. I went right from being an investigator in Troop A to being a lieutenant in Troop A, BCI. So, and we'll talk about how I got over that. And then I stayed in Troop A, BCI, and then I became a captain. I was a uniform captain for several years, and my total time in rank and captain was about 9, but I did the last 3 or 4 was Troop A BCI captain. And then I became the Troop A major, a staff inspector in PSB for about a year and a half out in Western New York. And then my dear friend and a fan of the show, Superintendent Keith Corlett, he called me up and said, "Hey, I need you to come to Albany." And I thought it was a bump. I'm like, "What? Yeah." He's like, "It's a lateral, but I need you to come in." Then Lieutenant Colonel Bobby Nuzzo needed help. He didn't have a staff inspector, and uniform lieutenant is probably the biggest bear of all jobs on our agency. Most responsibilities, most most things moving in parts. So I said, sure, I'll come to Albany. I came to Albany as a staff inspector. I did as I told Superintendent Corlett, I did a 307-mile move on Friendship. And that's the distance from my house to division headquarters. And then it just really spiraled really quickly from that. I went from staff inspector and field command to I was the ADS uniform to the field commander to the first deputy. And I appreciate Jay saying that I was a superintendent. Technically, for a year I was, but I was really the acting superintendent. My picture does not go on the wall.
Okay. Well, it's
we
good
consider
enough.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
exactly.
appreciate that more.
So actually, that's amazing, and I love how you laid your career out. When you first started, was that like a goal of yours to get up high in the ranks, or just at the natural progression, that's where it ended up?
I wanted, first of all, my whole career path was I wanted to be a New York State trooper.
Yeah.
As corny as that sounds, I wanted to be
Yeah.
a trooper, like
Yep.
you guys, like most people we know and that we gravitate to. The people that we hung out and are friends with are all the same people.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a trooper, and
Yeah.
then when I came on the job, I said I want to be an investigator, and my goal was to be an investigator. That
Mhm.
was
Okay.
it. But
Yeah.
something happened along the way that made me change my opinion, and it is, and I don't want to use their names because I'm respectful, but I had some fucking horrible supervisors, some horrible bosses that made me say I could listen to these people the rest of my career, or I could study and be them and treat people the way they should be. And so we always talk about getting someone mentor or role model that you should emulate and follow their career path and try to be like them. I actually did the opposite. I found people I despised that I hated working for because they're terrible leaders. And I said, if I ever get that rank, I'm going to do the exact opposite. Somehow it worked.
That's
So
awesome.
thank you to all those horrible leaders I had over the years. You benefited I benefited from your horrible decision making and how you treated people.
A quick
sure.
a quick nod to a couple of people that you mentioned. Bob Nuzzo is a mentor of mine and a wonderful human being who I ended up keeping a good relationship with over the years. He won't admit that he watches the show, but he watches it, so I want to mention his name. Thank you. And also one of your classmates.
Real quick, Carm.
Yeah.
I learned so much from working with Bobby Nuzzo, Pat Regan, Joe Tripotto, Steve Smith. I was a Troop A kid, and you don't know anything about the other part of the state other than details and big picture stuff. And working for Bobby and Joe Tripotto and Pat Regan and everybody I mentioned, Steve Smith, you name it. I mean, I learned so much working with them, and it was a blessing for me to have that opportunity to work with such and their peers, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't. I kind of like secretly like really looked up to them all. I still afterwards I told them that I really looked up to them and I appreciate what they did for the agency. But I look up to colonels as much as there's troopers. I look up to the same way.
Yep.
And I can give you a bunch of troopers that I've looked after who my career is where it is or was because of them as well.
Yeah. Yep. I think you go right back to your first senior guys that taught you the job. Mine, for me, it was Matt Martin, Trooper Matt Martin, and Kevin Gardner, who just those two guys are legends. And I'm sure we could all tell stories about the people on our job that taught us about community policing and doing the right thing and being decent human beings. But absolutely. So tell us, if you would, a little bit about what does leadership mean to you?
I actually I teach leadership at the local police academy here in Erie County. I've done it for about 15 years, and I could give you the classroom definition, but it would be boring you and the audience. I really think leadership comes down to this. For me, it's having the vision that the path that you or the agency is going down is the correct path. Having the balls to change midstream if it's not. To knowing that you don't know everything. Those things they put in your collars do not make you instantly smarter. Group decision making gives you better decisions.
Yep.
Because if you let 12 people in on a decision, that's 12 different sets of opinions, views, experiences, education, backgrounds, makes your decision so much better. Humility to realize that you don't know everything, but the intelligence to empower people to go forward and do the job, carry out that mission. The last part of it is the managerial courage. Now I put this in buckets as managerial courage. If you're being told by someone above you something you don't agree with, You have to stand up for your people. You can't be a yes man or woman. You have to stand up for them. If it's not right, it's not right. And there's been times in my career that's happened. And good right or indifferent, it is what it is. And sometimes decision making is made in a vacuum. And when you call people on it, sometimes it's not great. But you got to have the balls to do that.
Yeah.
You also you have to walk the walk. And this is a big part of who I end up being in talk to talk. You have to be what you want the people to be. Everything I said, compassionate leader, disciplined, but you have to look the role too. You have to be, you have to be sharp in that uniform. I know we've discussed this, Jay. And you got to look good in the uniform. You got to look
You got
crisp.
You
You
got
got to
it.
wear that's in heart.
Yep.
Stay in shape. The life you save in the next fight might be your own.
Yep.
Wear the uniform proudly, and this is why. And I lost track, and that's a horrible admission from me, but there's been about 180 plus division members die in the line of duty. And that's plus. We put on our uniforms. We don't put our uniform on for us. We put it on for every gray rider that came before us, present gray riders and future gray riders. But most importantly, we put it on for the men and women who died for that fucking uniform. Wear it
Absolutely.
proudly. Act proudly. That's how I carried myself. That's what I think. My leadership, I can give it a clinical definition. To me, that's what leadership is. Empowering the
But
people,
that,
seeing your path and going after it.
yeah. And that shows in the example that Carm, you might want to bring up, but I've heard more examples of this where a trooper we'll use Carm's example, makes an arrest, and you, regardless of whether you were the superintendent or the first dep, making phone calls and just congratulating them on a good arrest. Just that recognition of like, hey man, I see you. Good job putting in the effort. Good job when no one else, your own line sergeant or your station commander can't give you that recognition. Good job. I see you, and
Yep.
thank you for what you're doing.
One of the troopers that I'm still in touch with, and I'm going to mention his name whether he wants me to or not, but Toby Schuler, who's the Troop F guy, he actually mentioned when I mentioned that you were coming on the podcast, Steve, he's like, oh, yeah, when he was the first deputy superintendent, second in command of the state police, he called me about a psilocybin mushroom arrest that I had made. And I got this phone call, and he's just like, I looked at my phone. I'm like, what the fuck? Who is this? And he thought he was being punked. And I heard that story about you from numerous members where you'd call them personally, which was unheard of amongst the ranks of the state police for the first deputy superintendent to call a trooper or an investigator and say, hey, great grab, keep up the great work. It was unheard of, which is, in my opinion, one of the things that made you a phenomenal leader was that you took the time to do that personally. And you don't have the time to do that in that rank. I know that for sure.
I think you always have time to thank people.
Yep.
And
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you. And that's what I think is such a key, is that it's that simple thing. It's not, I don't want to take anything away from that, but it's so simple just to make a 15-second, minute and a half conversation just to show that appreciation, because it goes so far to those who are doing this job. It goes so far.
We are so quick to punish people or call people out when they do something wrong. Why don't we do it equally as much when we do something well? And I tell you what, we do things well a lot more than we do things wrong.
Yeah,
so you should be on the phone all the time congratulating people. I'll tell you this, and I'm not saying this like, oh, look at me. I've made hundreds of those phone calls, but there's hundreds, right? 95% went like this. Hey, Trooper so-and-so, this is Steve NIGRELLI up in division. Dead air. Sir?
What did I do wrong?
Looking at the phone like, who this is not. And then there's troopers, which I love, and some investigators. And actually, if they watch the podcast, they'll know who they are. They'd be like, I was waiting for you to call. But I called them so much because they had so many great cases. I thought, were you off last week? I thought you were going to call last week. I go, no, it percolates up through the system. I got to get it.
Give me a minute.
Great. It was great.
Yeah.
You know what? And it's being I was very proactive when it came to narcotics enforcement as a trooper, and obviously 5 years in CNA. It's a big part of my life. So actually, the secret is I was actually living vicariously through them.
Yep.
I wanted to know how they got into the car. And they were like, I think in the beginning, they were like worried about, is he checking my PC? I'm like, no, what worked? I mean, my son's on a job. I would like to share this with him, like a best practice. Like dad, best practice. You started talking and then started living vicariously through them. I was like, then what happened? I think on the other end of the phone, like, this guy's crazy. But you know what? It was an honor. And so when you're in a troop or unit, you don't see the big picture. And that was my issue is I didn't see the big picture for the division. I saw Troop A, and I saw when I was in professional standards, I saw E and A and T4. Then you go to Field Command when I was with Colonel Nuzzo, and then you see the great work across the division on a daily basis, shift by shift, hour by hour. That's the aha moment of we are who we say we are. We are the elite New York State Police. That was my moment when I saw it from the tip of Long Island, from Riverhead to Raybrook to Jamestown, and every troop station zone between.
Yeah,
Men and
but
women in New York State Police are
also
doing outstanding jobs.
what made you, I think, was a little different too, is your collaborative partnerships with other agencies that I think is indicative of like what leadership style you are. You're not the guy who's like, oh, we're the best. You're the guy who's like, because you have those relationships with all these other law enforcement agencies, state agencies, local agencies. I was talking to, and I'll mention his name too. He didn't give me permission, but I don't care. Jimmy Mullen, the undersheriff of Ulster County, who he did his first ride along with me. Yes, he did his first ride along with me many years ago as a civilian, and we had stopped somebody, and I want to say we stopped somebody for a drug arrest, and here he is, the undersheriff today, and he mentioned specifically you, that you're a great leader, and that you're kind of like the guy that always, and that's how I always modeled my relationships with law enforcement agencies, was to try to be as interactive as you can with other agencies, that you're their partners. You're not, better than them. You're not, and that, I think that's what really in your position makes a big difference too, as a leader.
I think when you heard my background, my family's mostly Buffalo Police, and my cousins are with the Erie County Sheriff's Department. We have some feds, but mostly we're just like Western New York, right? But I think the blessing for me was having that background and having the appreciation, the work that goes on in urban centers like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, you name it, across the state. But also having those 5 years in CNET, where all I worked for other agencies. It's not like Narco works now or VG Networks now. I was at loan to police departments all over the state, whether it was in Hudson Valley, Central New York, or Western New York. I mean, I got to work with agencies. I testified in 30 different county grand juries, and I got to work all over the state. And my appreciation is this: men and women in law enforcement just wear different uniforms. They're still the tip of the spear. They're still great. They still are dedicated to protecting their community and being the fucking anti-bullies. So I don't care what uniform you wear. I have an appreciation for what the men and women in law enforcement do, which helps me in my current, my current role as a consultant. And I know we're going to get to that later, but
Mhm.
it helps.
Good.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
just because you're not a trooper doesn't mean that you're not doing, like, I hold the troopers in highest regard, but that doesn't mean this doesn't mean I don't believe that every member of law enforcement, every agency, from the federal, state, local level, and my multiple friends in county sheriff's department across the state are doing outstanding work, and their communities are lucky to have them. I hope their communities appreciate what they have with
Yep.
those local law enforcement officers.
Agreed.
Go ahead, Colin.
So I'm going to skip. I had written a framework that I had sent. I'm going to kind of skip over the social media thing quick, and I just want to ask you briefly about the Ralph Bucky Phillips detail, which I think was a really pivotal moment in our state police history. And before I do that, I also want to mention, and I'm sure you'll touch on this too, but fallen Trooper Joe Longobardo and Trooper Don Baker, who rose through the ranks, who was very badly injured and later came back to work and is an absolute hammer. And I got to work for him in Albany. I just want to give a quick shout out to him and in memory of Joe Longobardo, which I know is very personal to you. But if you would tell us about the Bucky Phillips detail and your interactions there.
Bucky, you probably have them in your communities. People are persistent criminals. You heard their, legendary car theft. I mean, Bucky was a car thief. He was a burglar car thief. So a lot of people in our community, our part of the state, knew Bucky, but he's a low-level criminal. And when he escaped right around about April 1st or so. This was different. He was caught on camera up on a reservation at a gas station, pulling a gun and putting it into one of the local Native Americans' heads. This is not the Bucky that we knew. And he was so close to getting parole. So it made no sense to escape. And then he went on a run. So this was a county case. And then we pulled in, it was like on Friday, Captain George Brown, the BCI Captain Troop A, called our VFW squad and the U.S. Marshal Task Force and VSIT. We were all going to have a meeting on Monday. You can't make this shit up. We were going to form our own little task force to try to capture Bucky. The county was doing their, they're doing the best they could, but he was leaving Erie counties and multiple counties driving over, as you now know. It was that Friday night and the Saturday morning where Bucky shoots Sean Brown in another state, in another county, another troop rather. And that's when it went full on. It was a traffic stop on a stolen car. And as he walked up, he kind of looked in the rearview mirror, gave him a side view mirror, gave him a smile, and fired out the door, out the window, and struck Trooper Brown. That ramped everybody up. And then we went, state police went like state police should, and we do better than anybody. We ramp shit up. But this is a multi-troop operation at that time because it didn't occur in Troop A. So you got C, and C is involved because it happened in C. Then you got Troop E is involved because going back and forth. And then we really went full on. So that's that. From that point on to data capture, I think I worked 6 or 7 days a week. I think I worked 495 hours of overtime as a lieutenant. And we started out uniform force, huge, we had sightings, and we learned a lot because we didn't do things well. And this is why you always should do an after action. We didn't do things well sometimes. We had troopers standing in the road. Now, this guy's armed. There's cornfields all around him. We'd stand in the road checking trunks of cars. He could have sniped any one of us. We had outdoor briefings at SP Fredonia with hundreds of troopers. And he wrote in letters and told correspondence to his daughter that he was across the street from us. He knew so much, he couldn't watch it on the news as well, but he knew so much that we were having outdoor muster and briefings that he said he could have shot into our crowd of troopers. So we learned, and even from my perspective, I'm a BCI lieutenant rather at the time. Myself and my partner was Lieutenant Rick Allen, and it being the field commander. We were in charge of platoons of BCI members, and we were doing like the BCI does. We were searching for a fugitive, but it took us into the woods. So I spent most of my summer, as did Rick Allen, as did most members of the BCI. And I know MRT, the K-9 unit, we all were in the woods and we searched day in, day out that whole summer. And then on that fateful day, my family was coming in from New York City. So I wanted to get home. So I got home, I want to say probably close to 5 o'clock. And I only lived like 30 miles from this. As I walked into the kitchen, I'm looking out the window, and my wife is checking the water temp on the pool because I said, make sure the water's warm because it's Buffalo. We got to heat our pools, even in the summer. And my phone rings, and it's then senior investigator, retired as Lieutenant Colonel Richard Landell. I don't know if you guys know Rick.
I do. Good
He's
guy.
a multi Superintendent's Commendation Award winner.
Yep.
He calls me and he says, hey, boss, 2 SWATs got shot behind, and he gives the name out of Bucky's ex-wife's name. I said, what? And he goes, 2 SWATs just got shot behind Katrina's. Fucking like, I go, I'm on my way. And I remember I had a white polo shirt on just a white polo shirt and just like BDUs. I jumped in my car, drive like a maniac. And then we had Grand Prix at the time. Do you remember those little Grand Prix? I was in the grass of the New York State Thruway passing cars. And I get there and I go right to the scene of the shooting. As I'm doing it, they do like a little flight, a little helicopter because it was a hot zone. So they bring in our Huey, grab Joe and Donnie, bring them out to a safe zone where there's ambulance. And so the helicopter lands, and because everybody's on the pursuit now where they think Bucky had gone to. There wasn't a ton of people there. So myself and a couple other members ran over and got the first stretcher off the helicopter, and it's Joey. And carrying him there.
Take your time.
Look, right?
Yeah.
Like grayish blue. His lips are almost blue. And I give that sterno rub that they teach it, right? I'm screaming, Joey, because weeks before with Joey, he's telling me about Louis, his son, because I have sons. And he was asking me about, he loved hearing stories about my sons were older. Obviously, Louis is a baby, what I do with my kids. So when we're walking in the woods, I was telling these stories. So I had a connection with Joey. and I'm rubbing his chest and I'm screaming, Joey, Joey. Now we put him in the ambulance, and Joey's bad, but I'm looking at him. Joey's got a leg wound. We get Donnie. Now Donnie's been eviscerated with like I can't remember if it was 223 round. It was a high caliber round. I can't remember at this time, but a gunshot wound to his stomach, rifle wound to his stomach. He's got like a wound vac on. Good thing Donnie is, a nurse. And I'm looking at Donnie, and Donnie's propped up on his elbows. And I'm thinking, Joey's bad. He lost blood, but I'm thinking Joey's going to be fine. We just got to get blood into Joe. But Donnie's been shot through the stomach. And as I'm carrying him, he's on his elbows on the gurney. And I'll never forget this. He goes, get Joe, check Joe. I'm like, talk about heroes.
Yeah.
And selfless individuals. He just got shot through the stomach. And he's telling you, check on his partner. Because Donnie's a medical practitioner, and he knew Joe had lost a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So he knew what I didn't know, which probably could fill a room. And I remember walking away, and as the door shut, and one was taken to one hospital, and Donnie was taken down to Hammett Medical. It's a level 1 trauma center in Erie. And Joey went local first, and then he went local. Then he flew to ECMC, where he also ultimately passed a couple days later. I remember just in shock. I mean, these are guys I knew. It doesn't matter if I knew them or not. This shit got real in a hurry. And I looked down, and my white shirt had blood. I don't know if it was Joey or Donnie's, but my hands from holding our hands. Fucking never forgot. I still had that shirt and those pants. I just bagged them up. I never forgot.
That's
Breaks your heart.
amazing.
And then we
Crazy.
fucking captured that scumbag a couple fucking days later.
Yeah.
Cowardly. Came out of the
Yeah.
woods. When Tommy Anicola from our NMRT
Yep.
is on a gunship, and Tommy's got his gun on him. He's got the fucking dot on him. Comes out of the woods with his hands up. That's in
Of
Pennsylvania.
course.
Yeah,
I give Tommy Anicola. He's a dear friend of mine. Still a member of MRT. I think he's probably the longest serving MRT guy right now. I give him the 100% credit for having trigger control.
Yeah.
But sometimes I shake my head.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was in that role, if I would do the same. And that's a horrible thing to say, but I don't know.
It is, but it's an honest thing also, because you just don't know in that situation.
He had a gun when Tommy saw him. He had a gun. It would have been justified. But
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I think it's important to recollect and talk about too the trauma that comes along with that, the vicarious trauma that I think everybody that was there that day that dealt with it, and to Joe Longobardo's family and dear friends, we think of you guys every day. Years later, we had Dave Brinkerhoff, and I was around for that. I was a Troop F guy that kind of was sent up to get to the border there of Troop F and Troop C, and when Dave Brinkerhoff got shot and killed, it was brutal, because I had known him a little bit, not on a level that he did with SB Catskill and the SB Catskill family, but these situations are brutal, and I always really want to pay tribute to their memories and to mention their families too. So,
you want to know another personal connection with Brink? His mom was my babysitter.
no kidding.
Yeah, she lived next door to me.
Wow.
So I've known Brink
That's
since he's been a
crazy.
little kid. Frank used to work at a restaurant. His mom, Karen, had a restaurant by us. My mom and dad, my grandparents used to go there like on Fridays, and it was right. She had a couple restaurants. Karen's. We had my dad's 75th birthday at it. Karen hosted it. I've known.
Yeah.
She was a Mutton as her maiden name, but I've known Karen all my life. Literally all my
Great
life.
family, truly great
Yeah,
family,
amazing.
and you get to know families like that after the
those aren't
fact.
easy. The stuff on the job that you look back on. You look back on the fun stuff, right? The ball busting, the friendships, right?
Yeah.
But there's certain things, going to tell Brink's dad that he passed. Going to tell Jill Matthijs's mom and dad that she passed. And tell you about what amazing people they are. They were at a food kitchen preparing food for people who are less fortunate when I had to pull them out. Myself and Major Chris Cummings, we pulled them out to tell them that their daughter wasn't going to make it home.
She was a
And same
classmate
thing
of
with-
mine and a good
with
friend
Roy
too, Jill.
Brinkerhoff telling him.
Yeah.
And lastly, and the one that tears my heart out is Kevin Dobson, who's my friend, my childhood friend, all the way up, my trooper friend.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. I told his fiance and his children that he wasn't coming home. And troopers are troopers, right? Dauber gets killed on the 290, gets hit by a car. It's actually death by sunlight. It's that time in the morning where the sun's just coming over the road, and Kevin did everything right. The person who hit him was coming on an on-ramp. So Kevin stopped the car on the 290. He not only did it stop him on the shoulder, he stopped him on the shoulder of the on-ramp. Like the speed up zone. He was that far over, but the person coming on the on-ramp, we replicated this multiple days in a row. It's death by sunlight.
Yeah.
And just hit Kev. And I got the call right away. But I was thinking it's Dauber, like Dauber's Superman. He's the biggest ball buster, He's larger than life. He's like AJ Spear. AJ Spear was Superman, right?
Yeah.
And get to the hospital. I did the right thing because I knew it would get out quick. I grabbed his best friend, John Becker, who's a trooper that they worked the interstate with, and they're best friends. They live near each other. I grabbed John and his wife, and we went over and did a notification because I knew it was going to make the news quickly because the 290 was shut down. And Kevin's fiancee, Bridget, says as soon as she saw me walking up with my uniform, Stetson, and seeing it, she knew. And we got back to the hospital, and he was still Dauber laying there. He was KPD laying there. And I just remember just going up and running my hand. He had this crazy fucking thick hair, this Irish thick hair. And I remember running my hands through his hair, like pulling him, like, Dauber, wake up. Where the fuck was I? You're talking, I think it was episode 4. Was it episode 4 you talked about trauma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's people that have experienced shit on our job that goes with you. Things that you remember.
Yeah.
That stupid things that I remember is running my hand through Kevin Dobson's hair as he laid there. My friend laying there.
Yeah.
And looking back at the troopers, and the troopers, see, Kevin was one of those guys that was larger than life. Looking back now, we should always say, how they always say the good die young, or those people that were really amazing. We should have known Kevin was going to die early because he was that guy. He lit the room up. He came in, he owned it. And just the halls were lined with troopers from all over because he was that beloved. He was one of us. He was ours. He was KPD.
Trooper Dave Lane was that for me. One of my very good friends and one of the true. He was just a character at SP Catskill. Came from Troop D, served in Troop D, and then wanted to come back to Troop F because he loved it and SP Catskill's patrol area so much. And the day he died, without getting into the details, was a really tough day for everybody in the SP Catskill family, and I've grown really amazing friendships. Trooper Jeff Dovich does the golf tournaments every year and does amazing work, and he and his wife Crystal. But the Lane family, amazing people, and the things that stick out from that day. You have little flashbacks here and there, and I'm sure we could all tell the stories over and over again. But dark topic, but we wanted to cast light on their memories as out of respect for them and their families. And I think it's kind of a perfect lead-in, Jay. And I don't know if you feel this way about to talk about the state of the criminal justice system in New York State right now, and as a lead-in to tie that in. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree on everything. I just wanted to add one little thing. If we ended here, which I don't want to do because I'm actually like, I'm a little in awe, Steve. Carm said you were a great guy. And where are we at here? 34 minutes, just listening to you talk and seeing how much you gave and how much this job and individuals meant to you. It just oozes out of you. And I appreciate that on so many levels you cannot imagine. But I agree. Let's go ahead and change topics before I start crying and getting into my emotions, for sure. So the state of New York is a little bit blissful, if you will. Now, you were, even if you don't want to say you were the head honcho, you were in charge for a number of years on different levels. And I think that we both would love your perspective on what the fuck we're doing and how we could better ourselves, and what is it that needs to stop immediately.
Thank you for the opportunity to address this topic. It's not good. Let's be honest, but it's something that didn't happen overnight. This has been going forward, like going downhill for a long time. But it took law changes, and he started chipping away at our justice system. Now, I'm a realist. Bail reform had to happen because bail was abused, but it went too far. Discovery. There had to be discovery reform because it was abused. I'm not saying abused by us, but there was abuse. I think we're all big enough to realize and old enough to realize there was abuses. Raise the age. I'm struggling with that one.
Me too.
So this is hubris at its finest. Probably why I'm not sitting in that seat is there's a lot of reasons. One of them was honesty. So when I met with a caucus from the legislature, and I had to express my concern, I said, probably the greatest document ever written is the Constitution. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Written a long time ago.
Yep.
I would tend to, yeah.
They didn't have hubris. It's been amended a bunch because as smart as they were, we've amended that document. So I understand what bail reform was intention, but there's unintended consequences that have resulted because of bail reform. Have the humility to realize this and have the brains to amend it. Same thing for discovery. The fact that we are losing 64% of cases that are being dismissed right now.
Yep.
Just on timeliness issues, 64%. So now if you look at a DA's office, and I'm not a huge fan of Alvin Bragg, but I do agree with DA Bragg in this regard, is because of the time issues, they have to prioritize their resources for serious crimes. Whether it's going after the president or not, it's not my issue. My point is that they are strapped for time and resources. That cases are being dismissed. And I want you to do me a favor. I want you to always remember this. Think about a case number. It's not a case number. It's a victim. And we dismiss cases because of timeliness. We are trampling on a victim's rights. A victim that you're going to re-traumatize when you have to tell them that the case is dismissed with no justice.
Absolutely.
Now, what kind of justice system is that? That is not justice. We have, and this has been going on for a while. We've been going down this track. How we handle corrections with HOLT Act. I was in the legislature when we were down there for the budget hearings in the well, when you sit down there and the legislators sit above you and they ask questions. And then it was acting Commissioner Anthony Annucci with current Commissioner Dan Morticello, myself, and the Commissioner of DCJS and the First Deputy. In each one of them, they got like 5 hours to ask us questions. And the HOLT Act came up. And there was transparency about the chilling effect it will have on the ability within correctional institutions to hold people accountable. If you're a lifer and we can no longer put you in shoe or for whatever infraction that they used to, it takes away their ability. So you want to have issues? Corrections is a whole other issue. And how we do parole. Now, I was because of my consulting, I know we're going to talk about that, my consulting business. I was at the Corrections Leadership Association conference just last week, Sunday through Tuesday. And he started talking about correctional people are in correctional facilities in the country. Now, as you know, New York by population is the 4th most populated state, as you know. California, Texas, Florida past us, and New York, and then Pennsylvania's 5. So I prepared a little list, if you don't mind me reading off my list.
Just a quick to clarify the shoe. You mentioned shoe. Explain what that means to the viewers.
Special housing units. So they get put into a isolation cell where they do still have their yard individual yard time, or they get their meals. It's not something you see in the old movies. It's just that they have a proclivity for violence. Great word, use it often. Proclivity for violence,
Hmm.
or they had narcotics, whatever. It's a way of in a tier system inside correctional facilities to isolate it, to cool the situation. So you had someone doing something violent. It's not punishment only. You put them into an isolation area so it cools it over time. Temperatures and temperatures and tempers go down. Situations get resolved. Right? That's a theory. You
Yep.
take that ability away. People say in Gen Pop, and then it's just there's no recourse that you have for someone having contraband or assaulting staff or assaulting another inmate, other than the ability to transfer them to another facility. Not great. And I'm not a corrections officer, but I worked as a BCI guy. I worked in facilities a long time doing
Yep.
an unusual incident outside crime prosecution. So let's go back to our list. New York is fourth largest state population wise. So this is the amount of inmates in correctional facilities as of the start of the year. Texas, 149,000. Florida, 87,000. Georgia, 50,000. Ohio, 46,000. I just go randomly now. Michigan, 33,000. Pennsylvania, just about 39,000. Arizona, 35,000. Little North Carolina is almost at 31,000. New York, 32,583. That's before we're going to let a bunch of people out if they're within 110 days. We're ninth. And if you look at per capita, some of those states that are ahead of us are much smaller. And I'm not saying that people in other states act worse and they should be incarcerated. We've taken a stance in this state to do alternatives to incarceration. So what that means for the public is people who would be deemed, if they lived over a state line, to be deemed to be need to be incarcerated in New York, we do alternatives to that. We let you stay in population. We let you stay in communities. Three reasonable people. Whoever thought this is going to improve public safety, the safety of our citizens, by decriminalizing things, by not putting people in jail, by letting people out of jail early, who thinks that's a good idea?
Hmm.
And there's a group of people that actually make these laws that think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And the constituents they represent think it's a good idea.
Can
But
I
I got to
add?
tell you what,
Can I add
for the
something to that
sound
when you're done?
majority, we don't agree with this.
Yeah, no, we don't. So in 2019, just before, I think I may have mentioned a little bit about it at some point, that before the 2019 Bail Elimination Act was put into place, I was actually asked to speak at New York State OCA basically headquarters down in Brooklyn, right next to Brooklyn Law. And I had to speak before a room packed full of Superior Court judges from around the state. And I don't know how in their right mind they thought it would be a good idea to have a senior investigator talk about the impacts of the proposed bail reform legislation. But I kind of gave
you're the person who's probably going to see it the most.
Yeah. Yep. So I went up and I'm on this panel in New York City at Brooklyn Law, and I give this very impassioned speech about the effects, and I gave the example of a domestic violence victim and what you said, re-victimization of those folks. I gave a tried and true example of what it would mean and the failure, and overwhelmingly the Superior Court judges in the room all applauded what I said. There were some folks from New York City, and let me back up. That whole, and you know this, Steve, better than anybody, but that whole law effectuation took place without any input from police officers, police commanders, or anybody from prosecution. It was effectuated in Albany, the legislator, without any meaningful input from the other side of the aisle, who actually have to deal with the day in and day out ramifications of what that means logistically. And overwhelmingly, the support in that room was for not reforming bail laws to the extent that they've been reformed. And at that time, I remember thinking, yeah, I'm going to get jammed up. Somebody's going to call Albany, and I'm going to get PC'd at some point, and I'm going to have to go see Steve NIGRELLI in Internal Affairs about being free spirit. And I was very professional and tactful about it, but I gave a very literal example. And what's your opinion on that? I mean, in terms of how that was conceived and how it effectuated in the legislature, excuse me.
Three men in a room. 3 men in a room. So instead of bringing in the public defenders, who are not included, whether you want them in or not, they have a rule there.
Yeah.
The prosecutors, state sheriffs, state chiefs, New York State Police, and our friends in corrections. Not one person was included in that conversation. Do you think any of those entities would have given some input that had made this law a little better? That is not, that would have helped us not mandate now that we need amendments. We need this thing amended because there has been unforeseen consequences. And when I say unforeseen consequences, that means people who have been given, or because of the bail law, have been able to stay out, who done additional crimes and victimization. So as unforeseen consequences, those are victims.
Those are victims. Those are victims. And I gave the example of the warrant load that I was, right, Jason, remember this during that podcast? My warrant drawer just for bureau warrants tripled.
And here's the thing: we all make mistakes, with whether it's us as human beings, individuals, or us as society, the legislator. And if they made the mistake, okay, not a big deal. But to both of your points, you now see the repercussions of these mistakes. So how about now we put something forward to rectify that, so that we're no longer dealing with these families that are continually getting victimized time and time again.
And it's no longer anecdotal. Now there's a data set, and that's what they wanted. When this was passed, they wanted not a 1-year data set. They want a multi-year data set to show that there should be an amendment. Well, now you have it.
Right.
Let's move on. The other part of this is, and it's rarely thought of, is because of people in a district attorney's office, law enforcement, we want to do our jobs and serve and protect the public. But if you do your job and there's no result, there's no justice, things are getting dismissed. You're not getting prosecutions. Things are 64% thrown out. Well, we're losing good quality assistant DAs.
Yep.
Because they don't want to be a part of that system. And, people, I just had this conversation just this morning in the gym with a trooper, and it's home life balance. And for the millennial younger troopers, home life balance, and probably at a fault, we did it. I chased overtime most of my career when I was younger. Home life balance is very important to this society of law enforcement. But what it's impacting it now is that work part, home life, work. If you're not getting any kind of personal satisfaction from work because the cases you're working on are not getting prosecuted, there is no justice for those victims.
Yep.
Your morale hurts, and then all of a sudden you get the pullback. What's the sense of me doing it? Why? And at the end of the day, it makes our society less safe and more victims.
Yep.
So we're losing good quality people. Morale sucks.
Yep.
But the number one point is there's people are being victimized that otherwise wouldn't have been.
Right.
Yep.
A law that's allowed that.
Because of the recidivism rates increasing, et cetera. Yes. Sorry, Jay, I cut you off.
Not only that, no, it's fine. Just going back to Steve's point, is going back to the trooper and their perspective of this debacle is that not only are they feeling the fact that they're not able to put that effort forward and have it go through and have it mean anything, but now they're also getting reprimands from their supervisors for not having produced enough activity. So now you're getting double. You're getting from your sergeant, like, why aren't you getting these arrests? And you're also, each arrest that you make is getting disposed of or thrown out. So it's like, I can't imagine being a road guy with any amount of time on right now, trying to make face of this job and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a difficult one.
And for any backroom investigator or detective, I say backroom meaning they're in the back of the building, working and building the felony case investigations, the morale, and I'm still in touch with a lot of folks, and I'm sure you guys are as well. The morale of these, especially the people who are in the line of sight dealing with the public, they are so frustrated because of seeing things just disintegrate in front of them because of these new laws, that the morale is, I think, clearly at an all-time low. And as I said, I keep saying this, as Tim Diamond, retired senior investigator, Tim Diamond, who was the head of NYSP, said, if you have trouble attracting troopers for the New York State Police, you have a big problem.
Yeah. And I just was, I think I told Carmen about this story. I have somebody that lives close by, let's call him a neighbor, that just recently got made lieutenant, and he's working in NYC. And he's even describing how he's getting told to pretty much micromanage these guys, as he feels the best way to describe it, on the road. They want accountability for literally almost every second while they're on duty. Although I don't disagree with that, you also have to have the micromanaging part of that has to be let up and let the troopers do their job also. If you're training them appropriately.
Quantitative to qualitative management styles. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in, that there's some troopers are going to be exceed a standard and there's some troopers are going to be below the standards. That's how we create a mean.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But at the end of the day, what I did is, and I actually talked to the other troop commanders at the time. I went to the range every day. I had the fortune that the range and Troop A is in the building. I went to the range every day, and I talked to the troopers, and it was like a transparency, open door thing. But I told them what was important to me in eradicating drunk and drug drivers, and I gave them real life reasons why. And why it's not a ticket, it's a life you're saving. And I don't count at the end of the day how many tickets we have. I count how many fatalities we have, though. And I told them why tickets are important, qualitative, and stop hitting the replicate button.
Yeah.
Stop doing that, please.
Right.
But I got to walk through it every day with the troopers and tell them what's important and why your job is important and why it's meaningful, why you're impacting the community you impact is your community.
Yeah.
And do you want someone on fentanyl driving on the road, plowing into a soccer mom with a bunch of kids? No. But if you go buy that car and don't do any action, the other thing is, I just can't believe I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and the first deputy of Pennsylvania State Police said it's almost 50-50 the amount of their DWI arrests. They have DWI and DWI drugs. They're both at like 50-50 for the total amount of. And I'm going to guess New York State Police is about 15%. That's not a guess. That's a pretty accurate number, actually.
That says everything you need to know right there.
So we ought to do a better job. We got to do better. Yeah. We got to do a better job training, supporting. And it's not this, it's empowering. It's showing people why it's meaningful. What is the end result of their actions? How you're improving society, taking those dangerous drivers off the road.
Yeah, and also as a leader, in leadership style, I think one of the things that I always try to do with the folks that I working with, I would always try to be kind of clear about translating that you may not agree with a lot of the things that are coming from the decisions being made geopolitically, but at the same time saying, hey, we got to do this, but I understand why you might have difficulty dealing with it, and trying to be a realist about your expectations of them as a leader, right? And I think that's what kind of separates us from bad.
Yeah, folks. Carmen, I think. Thanks for leading me in. I was going to talk about this earlier, and I kind of skipped over. So you have an opportunity to create a policy, like in troop, in station, in zone, whatever. You want to create a policy. How's the best way of that policy to be really grabbed and ran with? We empower people to come to the table, right? You give an opportunity. So if you're a lieutenant, you bring in the sergeants. It's that moment, a good leader, if that's a good lieutenant, he would take that feedback back from the sergeant, stand up and say, hey, I have issues with this, but you got to give it a floor.
Yeah.
You don't go in there with the answer. You want to come up with the answer at the end of the meeting. You give them an opportunity to push back. And then a sergeant leaves that meeting, and a good sergeant leaves that meeting, or he and she meets with the troopers. And we'll say, this is the policy that's been discussed. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. They don't say, I don't know what they're fucking thinking, but this is what they have you doing. That's not leadership. You had an opportunity to express if you were given the opportunity, chime in, help craft the policy. And then the policy is better because a lot of people give input, but you don't be that type. Well, I don't know why we're doing this. Well, you do know why.
Yep.
You've been explained. Now it's your job is to explain it down.
And effectuate it in a meaningful way. It's sometimes tough to do, especially, again, nowadays with a lot of the things that are coming out of the legislature. And again, I want to clarify for the viewers, too. We are in no way bashing state police leadership. That's not our agenda here. We want to have a meaningful discussion about some important topics that we think really predicates how police work is done, and not just by the state police, but for the other police agencies that I respect the shit out of as well. My local agencies here.
This is my points. My talking points had nothing to do with the New York State Police and the leadership. I think the world of Steve James, Superintendent James. We're colleagues for a long time. I think he's doing a great job. It's just he's put in a situation. It's not easy, and having been in that situation,
Yeah.
Superintendent Bruin in that situation, Superintendent Corlett in that situation, Superintendent Peach and Superintendent D'Amico in that situation. Man, we all would have loved for Pataki. Pataki seemed like it would have been an easy guy to work for, but things changed.
Yeah.
And I think Superintendent James and his staff are doing a commendable job.
Yeah.
And I have nothing but the utmost respect for the superintendent and his executive team. Most of them are friends of mine, and all of my friends of mine, colleagues over the years.
This has nothing
this
to
is more about the legislative level
Yeah.
and the laws that they created, not us. We have to deal with the laws that they created.
Right. And it's not bashing. It's not bashing at all. It's just shedding the light and having accountability and coming up with possible solutions in a rational way, if nothing else.
I gave you nothing but analytical information. I gave you numbers.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is data sets now.
Right.
This is not Steve NIGRELLI's personal opinion. I think the laws, and I said it from the very beginning, we needed some bail reform.
Yeah.
We needed some discovery reform. I'm still not sure. Then there's some cases for raise the age. I understand that. But they've gone too far. Let's bring them back.
Yeah.
We have data now that shows that they went too far.
You have empirical data which illustrates your points, and it's out there, and it's in the press releases. You see people getting rearrested 2, 3, 4, 5 times. The one thing that sticks out to me during bail reform was I actually, J&J remembers this, I stopped a car which led to arrest of an individual, and they had 900 decks of heroin in their possession, and due to the bail reform laws, mandatorily they went to see a judge and they were set free, released on their own recognizance to reappear. It instantly turned into a warrant. You have somebody who's trafficking heroin laced with potentially fentanyl, which is the highest cause of death for white males between the ages of 18 and 30. Don't quote me on the exact age parameters, but it's leading to the highest death amounts. And you have this person that I cold stop for something they did that was messed up. The trooper comes, they end up going and getting arrested. I assist with it, turn it over to the local barracks, and this person is released by the judge mandatorily under the Bail Elimination Act, and it turns into an immediate warrant. And guess what? It's still a warrant today because I actually asked not that long ago.
Now, how often do you think this happens within the state? That you're just one in your little area. How many times has this happened throughout the state?
Steve could comment better on that for sure.
Yeah. Well, he already did. It's hundreds of times. It's countless times. I think this is a good time to maybe talk about Steve's new profession, his new job, his new business. I did a little snoopy snoop and just checking some things out. I think it's actually pretty cool. Not only what you're doing, but you're traveling and seeing the world, which is pretty fucking cool as well. So tell us about not only what you do, but what made you get into it, and that maybe the process and how you got all into that.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny story. I walked out of the building on, I think, October 2nd, and I immediately went to London to see the Buffalo Bills play, and go Bills. And
you're a fan of the Buffalo Bills? You don't say.
Yeah, it's weird. My wife and I and some friends went to London to see the Bills, and my son Taylor and his fiance, and we all great time. And we get back, and then so weeks of vacation. That's my first thing I did as a week of vacation. And then the second week was getting some stuff done. It was the fall, getting ready for winter, Buffalo winter. The third week, my wife says, you probably should get a job, part-time job. Now, here's the reason why. I don't know if you gentlemen know, I mentioned this earlier. April 4th of 2019, I went to Albany for Superintendent Corlett. It's 307 miles from my house. I would leave for 5+ years. I would leave on either Sunday night or Monday morning, about 3:30 in the morning, and I would drive to Albany. And normally, when I became the first step, I started going to New York City for meetings and stuff, representing the agency on Thursdays. And then Friday, I would drive home from the city, 347 miles from 1 PP to my house. So for 5 years, my life was like a date with my wife, just Saturday and Sundays. And then I was prepping. Then I actually bought duplicates of everything, so I didn't have to bring laundry home. I had all my suits. I had 2 sets of everything. You name it. I just did meal prep on Sundays. That was it. But it was like the third week. My wife said I got to get a job, so I just happened to be going to IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference in San Diego with the field commander Rick Allen. And while I was there, I told someone that I was on terminal leave for like the next couple months, and they said, "Oh, you should probably consider going and consulting." And I had met this person. I can't say her name because she was high up executive in government in the state of New York, but she came like a life coach to me. And this is before I left. I knew that I was going to be going down this path, and I knew that I wasn't going to be their guy for whatever reason. It's not to be discussed today, but I just knew I wasn't going to be their guy. And so this person in August, right around the state fair, reached out and said, this is someone executive in state government, said, "Hey, you should think about your next venture." And that's why I'm like, this isn't going to be good. So I met with this person and they started like, I don't really have any skill sets. I wasn't like a polygraph person. I didn't do crime scenes. I wasn't a negotiator. I wasn't computer crimes. I'm just someone who sent it to the ranks and that's all. I don't have anything. And so this person said, "Hey, I see you at all these events and you seem like you know a lot of people. Open up your phone right now." So I opened my phone up and just go to contacts, go to a list. I said, "Okay, how many contacts do you have?" And I said, 10,590. She
Holy
goes,
shit.
"That's your equity." She goes, "Where do you know?" I go, "Well, I was with the Special Olympics. So I have friends in like all 36 countries that I represented. I was their elected person that represented them on the board of directors. So I would travel around with Special Olympics. So I got to know law enforcement across the country, across the world, and through IACP, blah, blah, blah." She's like, "Yeah, that's your equity. You should create a consulting company that you someday that you use at your contacts." So that was at the fair, right after the fair. Fast forward September, I walk out the door, or October, I walk out the door. So at IACP, they said you should think about going to consulting. And weird, if you ever go to these things, you have your lanyard and you have a QR code and they scan it. Well, a couple people, I said, "I'm retired. I'm not." They scanned it, and then I got calls like the next couple of days, say, "Hey, would you want to think about going to consulting for our company and become a law enforcement consultant?" And so one of them is, and I could say it, they know I'm on a show, is Flock Safety, which is a huge company in the public safety space that does license plate readers. It's not really that anymore. It's like vehicle fingerprint technology because they don't need a license plate. Doing machine learning, they could, if you just put in a search engine, red car with missing hubcap, it searches, and they do about 20 billion reads a month. This is not a promo for them. They do 20 billion reads a month. That's more than Instagram. Although my daughter's trying to break that, compete with them, I think. Uh, so I said, "Yeah, of course." And then I got another one called Buffalo Armory, which is a local company that it was more on the international side. Now they're trying to move domestic. They make plates, ballistic plates, stuff for cars, shields for law enforcement, military, first responders. So, and then I've had some other ones that I can't. They don't want me to mention that I'm affiliated with them. Weird. Uh, but it's given me an opportunity. So all I do is I really utilize my contacts that I facilitate meetings. So like if Carm said, "Hey, do you know Jay?" "Yeah, I know Jay. I know Jay really well. Can you get a meeting with Jay?" "Yeah, I think I get us a meeting." I call Jay. "Hey, Jay, would you do me a favor? My friend Carm wants to meet," and that's all I do. I kind of set things up and I do it at, at for Flock, I do it at the national level. So I am the chief consultant for law enforcement. I handle their state accounts. So all 50 states, which is a great opportunity for travel. And the coolest part about that is I have state police. And so I started something at the beginning of the year that I wanted to get a photo with the colonels from the different state police agencies with their crest, their flag. They have, like we do, they have pride in their agency. So I went to 5 state capitals in January, and some of them are pretty cold. I could tell you Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska,
Mm.
uh, pretty cold. It was like 20 below, I think. And I got to go, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida. I've been to New Jersey. I've been to Kansas, Nebraska, all over, meeting state police colonels. And I go meet the troopers. And then I bring my client in, and then the meeting starts. And I kind of pull back from the meeting and the colonel and I would go have coffee and talk about law enforcement, talk about their agencies, and they'd inevitably give you a tour. And I got to interact with the people I love, troopers.
So cool.
And my other client is Buffalo Armory. They make active shooter vests for law enforcement. Same thing. I get to travel all over for them, but they're on an international side. So I just got back last night from Barbados, and I'm teed up to go to Trinidad and Tobago in a couple weeks. And then they just put something on my calendar, asking my availability to go to Cairo. So pretty cool, right? Pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Kid from South Buffalo getting to travel like this. But guess who I deal with in all these places? Law
Law
enforcement.
enforcement.
Right.
Yep.
My friends. I went to dinner on Thursday night in this little small seaside town in the south part of Barbados. It's like a fish. No, it's not a tourist place. I went with a bunch of police officers and some military guys, and it was probably the best red snapper, grilled red snapper I had. Beans and rice. Ate there with just some local cops. And it was
That's
like
so cool.
Love it.
I was where I was supposed to be. I'm with the people I respect, the men and women in law enforcement and our armed forces. So it's actually, my job is great. I actually love it. I really do.
Are
That's
you
awesome.
a one man? Are you a one man show, or do you have any employees?
This is it.
That's
I
awesome.
think I tell people I'm the brand. My connections. This is the brand right here. This phone right here with all the contacts is my brand.
Don't lose
But
that.
you know what? I whole huge learning curve. We should just do a show if you ever want to leave the agency and start an LLC. That's a whole other aspect of doing that. So I have an LLC, a single corp LLC, which I had to learn how to do all that stuff. Kind of, there's no how tos, or is
Yeah.
some, but different states have
We
different
should-
rules. So
Jay,
yeah.
we should probably pick his brain on that.
Actually-
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. But it gives me an opportunity to do what I love, and that's really interact with law enforcement and military and travel. The other part of my life is I love traveling.
How are you dealing with the travel part of it? How's your wife about everything?
Well, I just got the I don't mind you traveling during the week. It's on Sundays. I don't like traveling, but unfortunately, a lot of places it's Mondays it starts, so I have to travel out on Sunday. Like I'm going down to this week it's South Carolina and Boston, and then next week it's Washington D.C. for a week, and then the week after it's Biloxi, Mississippi. And some of those are
Do you
Sunday
have
week.
Do you have like downtime or times that it's less
Yeah.
busy?
Yeah, part of my job is I take people to dinner and drinks.
Not
My
bad.
clients. So a couple weeks ago, for one of my clients, I ended up arranging and facilitating 64 lieutenants, captains, majors, and colonels from state police across the country to a dinner in a really nice steakhouse.
Incredible.
The
Nice.
client came in, does the pitch, and I just set the table, and they do what they do, and I kind of hang out with colonels and cops from all over the
So
country.
cool. You know,
bad job.
Not for
Jay and I are definitely not opposed to you taking us to dinner the next time you're down in
Yeah,
the Hudson Valley area.
yeah. And what a great fit! Not for nothing. What a
Yeah.
great fit for you in a job. So I mean, I don't think you could come up with a better scenario for what I know about you and the job that you're currently doing.
And it's funny that it was conceptualized by a woman that I barely know. And she
Yeah.
saw me at events and parties, and she said, "No, you seem pretty outgoing. You know a lot of people. That could be your equity, and it's how you get into." And that's
Smart.
It's
It's-
worked so far.
Steve, quick commentary on that. You know who said the same thing? And I won't get into my current job or what I do for a living post retirement, but I have another a job that I had to interview a number of times for this position, and who said the same thing about your equity. And I'll mention his name too, Mario Restivo, who I know that you know and love. Mario is one of my very good friends, and he said, "Open up your phone and see." So I don't know if you gave him that speech, and that's where he gave it to me from, but he said the same thing, and I brought it up during the interview for the job, and it is absolutely the truth. It's the professional relationships you develop with the great men and women of law enforcement around the state and country that make or break your existence in this job.
And Carm, that's why you're successful, Mario. You don't get 10,000 contacts just by stealing contact. You go to a conference and stealing the attendance sheet. You do it for the right reason. You didn't do it over the course of your life because I may need that person someday. I might retire and start you did it because it's the right thing to do. You make friends. I mean, hey, let's go some places. You can get to meet people and you share contacts. You did it for the
Yep.
right reason. And if you didn't, these people would never pick up your phone if you called them.
Correct. So
Yep.
true.
So,
Perfect point.
Yeah.
Before we get any further, literally while we were talking, retired trooper texted. I'll say his name, Al Napolitano. He was injured back. What year was that, Carm? Do you remember? I think it was
I want to say
2020.
2020. Yeah.
2021?
Yep.
2020. Let's just call it 2020. In any event, he just reached out and he said he heard that you were on the show. And he literally said, can you please thank him? He was one of the only supervisors that called me to actually check on me. So it's just going back
Yeah.
to
How could you
you
not?
as a person.
How could, if we, this is my little fucking point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we claim that we're a family, we're a big family. We're a big family. If that's how you treat your family, you don't check on people, you don't show compassion, empathy. If people are sick, or if their family doesn't, I personally wrote all those little notes for people when their family, a loved one died. Not because it's the job.
Yeah.
It's because why wouldn't I? That's if I say you're my brother and sister, and I don't fucking send you a card, if I don't call and check on you, if you don't have a good grab and I say, hey, great job,
Yeah.
then I shouldn't have my fucking job.
So
Nor
true.
should anybody else who's sitting up there. If you don't do that and treat the people well, they shouldn't have your job.
Quick
Simple
note
as
on
that.
that. When I retired, I didn't know you. I mean, I had met you once or twice in Albany in my headquarters assignment up there. But when you sent me my retirement letter, and I don't know if you remember, but you actually signed. I actually have it downstairs, framed, and you wrote this nice message on it. Jay, don't make any stupid comments. You wrote a really nice note on it, and I was like, holy shit, this guy took the time to write me a personal note on my typewritten retirement letter from the Division of State Police, and it meant the world to me. So thank you for that.
In purple ink, wasn't it? It's in purple ink.
Yes.
That wasn't on accident.
I never, although it's a topic now about machine signatures.
Yeah.
I never did like the stamp
Yeah.
for letters. I personally signed every one of them. I made every call for, and not like, oh, look at me. Just I love the opportunity to say congratulations. Like when people made sergeant or investigator,
Yeah.
whatever rank it was, I love making those calls. I used to, and some majors were better. It give me some names, give me some cases that people are doing a great job. And then some majors were great. Give me names. I would call people all the time. And you just know the majors that did a great job. Their troops know it because I call a lot of people in their particular troops. And I always wondered, those majors that didn't give me names, did they not know who was doing a good job, or they didn't care? They didn't want their people to get accolades. And I said at a bunch of TC meetings, like, hey, some of these troops, and you know who you are because I call all your people all the time. I'm not getting some from other troops.
Yeah.
I have, this is going to be my one and only suspect question to me.
Here we go.
I'm throwing it at
Here we go.
So no, I want to put a little heat on here. And you could say I'm not answering that, but I don't think you will. So there's been a common theme, a somewhat common theme, to where you have a road trooper that is a very likable guy. He moves up through whatever work, to good work, hard working trooper, makes sergeant, makes station commander. And then there's that shift, whether it's from trooper to supervisor, line sergeant, or line sergeant to station commander. And then there's some that they don't transition, and not all of them do. I'll say that, but there's some when there's a certain time where they transition from. It's usually, I find, it's from that station commander to either a lieutenant or a captain. Once and you get into the commissioned officer ranks, to where there's that switch that flips, and that great noble guy / girl that everybody loved working with turns into the nightmare micromanaging supervisor who you can't get anything done with. So this is a two-part question. Why do you think this happens? And is there, more specifically, into the psyche part of it? And also, is it something that comes down from up here? Because you're a prime example that it doesn't have to be that way. So I think I answered my question just in talking it out.
Good job,
but
Jay.
Let me also interrupt that we're both eligible for Social Security after having listened to that, Jay. Thank you.
All right, so answer however you'd like.
I think it's number one is we don't empower people to make decisions at the lowest level in the organization because everybody pushes the buck. Now I have compassion for those leaders like lieutenants and captains and stuff, that everything gets pushed to them because someone down the line didn't make that decision. So they push it. Because why? Because we've come down with a hammer on people when they made a decision. So now what the reaction is, I'm not making a fucking decision. I'm going to push it down the road.
Yeah.
It's wrong. So now all of a sudden it gets to that level and people start worrying if I don't do the right thing by the book that I'm going to get hammered. I think it's cause and effect. People have done stuff in the past and we've come down super hard on them. And I think there's a belief that we want to promote people who are like that, micromanagers. I'm not a micromanager. And a lot of people I work with are not micromanagers. They're big picture people. Someone I have the utmost respect for is Patrick Regan. He never micromanaged. He's a big picture. Joe Tripotto, big picture guys.
They were two of my bosses, and I will absolutely say the same thing about them.
I don't know why.
I agree.
Think that's a perception that's required to get promoted on. I actually don't have respect for that.
Yeah.
I have more respect for you empowering your people your job, by the way. And I've said this a bunch of times. Your job is, as a majors and inspector, unless you're in PSP or something, your job is not going in and looking at the stats and individualize and what occurred last night, or that's someone's job. That is someone's job. It's not your job. You're a leader now. You run the zone, the troop, the division, whatever it is. Your job is not to micromanage. You're a big picture person. At that level in your organization that you mentioned, Jay, you should be cultivating relationships with outside entities, agencies, district attorneys' offices, associations. You should be you're running. I love being a zone commander. I loved it. That's what you should be doing. Working with the local chiefs and sheriffs. What you shouldn't be doing is drilling down to minute data when it's someone else's job. That is someone's job in the state police, though. It's not your job as a lieutenant, captain, major, inspector, unless you're
Right. Yeah.
right. Am I right? I mean,
That
does
was
that make sense?
Agreed.
I don't know. People have done this and people have gotten promoted, so they think that's their career track. If I'm a micromanager, I'm a hammer on people.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people in Albany that I know that weren't like that. That have gotten promoted over years, and a lot of people sitting up there now are good people.
Probably, yeah, absolutely. I think there's by far more people that are not.
Yes. Has it happened? Sure.
Yeah. Right.
Is it a perception?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Agreed.
You got affirmation, Carm.
Well, it's funny. Brian Webster, I'll mention his name. He was my BCI captain at one point, and I remember during a seniors meeting, he said to the seniors in the room, "He's like, you are the chiefs of police for your local stations. Get out there, develop those relationships. Try not to micromanage what's going on. Be the stewards of the state police for those local barracks." And he was so spot on with that, especially in a place like Rockland County, my last command. Like if you don't establish and develop those and culture those relationships with police agency chiefs, detective lieutenants, captains, and make that stuff work, you're never going to have the professional references to make something happen if you need it. Like we had a homicide a couple years ago. We didn't have the relationships we have down there to get additional rooms for suspect interviews, for our forensic team to have a remote location. If you don't do that and you don't empower your people to come together cohesively, you're going to fail. It's quite simple, honestly.
First of all, Brian Webster's a South Buffalo guy, so I'm not surprised. Second is back a long time ago, I think it's like 13 years now, Continental crash in Clarence, New York. I was a captain at the time, killing 50 people plus one on the ground. So when you get to the back of the pumper, is that the time to develop relationships with the fire, the sheriffs, the local PDs? Now, it's a mutual aid. Everybody's coming, right?
Yeah.
Continental plane hit a house. No, you develop relationships on blue sky days. That's when you go to the chiefs meetings, you go to we call them MAG meetings. I don't know what you guys call them downstate, mutual assistance groups. So it's like all the detectives you go to those meetings, you have coffee, you call people with bullshit when you don't need anything.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's how you cultivate relationships. So when something shit hits the fan, I remember being at the back of this pumper and I'm looking at the Continental tail fin, and there's a ton of fatalities in there. And Dave Case is the volunteer fire chief from that town. I know Dave. I've gone to training with them. I've had coffee with them. And then all of a sudden the sheriff shows up. I'm friends with the sheriff and the captain. And then the local PDs, town PDs come over. We all know each other.
Yeah.
So it's almost easier instead of saying, "Hey, my name is Everybody
Yeah.
knows each other and they work together.
Yeah.
That's when Brian's talking about that, that's exactly what he's referencing.
Yep. Yeah, and exactly to that point too, establishing those relationships with the victims advocacy groups, the district attorneys, the people in the community, the fire chiefs, and then the average citizens to walk into a store and have a cup of coffee with somebody standing at the cash register. You have to do that. That's the essence of community policing, and that could help you close the homicide by establishing that relationship with somebody in the community. It's of the utmost importance.
You know, there's like 19,797,000 citizens in the state of New York. 99.9% are good people.
Yeah,
Oh, sure.
Treat them like such.
absolutely.
Yep. That's a good point. And that's a good, I think that's a good segue. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time and
Agreed.
being on. This is by far not easy now. I'm just saying by far
It's
more
the
than what
episode.
I
Come on.
by far more than what I expected. Thank you so much. You're a great guy. You're a smart guy. You're very clever, well-spoken, and I can't thank you enough, both Carm and myself.
Can I just wrap it up real quick? Carm,
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Anything for the good order, Carm?
What's that, sir?
It's going to sound corny, but I love the New York State Police. And being told that I could not be the superintendent, it killed me.
Yeah.
It killed me. Not the title, but someone outside our agency, someone who's never done what we've done, dictates. And I get the politics of it. And thank God we got Steve James, someone from within the agency running it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a big, although Joe D'Amico did a great job, I'm very appreciative that Steve James is there.
Yeah.
And I thought, why? I always thought, was it because I wanted my picture on the wall? No. More money? That's not bad, but
Yeah.
it's because I love you guys. I love you motherfuckers. I love working with the troopers. You are my people. You are my people.
Likewise.
I get you. You get me. If you ever saw me at a state fair, county fair, at any of the parade details, I gravitated to the troopers and the investigators because that's the job.
Yeah.
The troopers and the investigators are the hallmark of the state police, the backbone. If I didn't mention your title, you are support. So I went out of my way to thank the men and women who make us look good on a daily basis. I gravitate to them because when you said earlier, Jay, about the superintendent, everyone's fearful that's how I felt about sergeants. And it still carries with me. I just went to the FARTS, the Florida Association of Retired Troopers, and I saw people that were like sergeants and lieutenants. And I kind of was like, get that little feeling again, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's Lieutenant so-and-so. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
It's because I have such respect
Yes.
of the agency and the men and women within it. That's the thing I miss most is a daily interaction and be able to do those outreaches and see the great work that's across the state. The New York State Police, and there are a lot of great agencies, the New York State Police has somehow been able to gravitate and attract amazing men and women to join our ranks. And we've been doing it since 1917. Carm asked me something. I'll end with this. If I had any things I would do different. And it's something I would rather I had done. One is, the Carm is I never was a senior investigator, and I was on that list, the Troop A list, and I made lieutenant. So it's the one rank that fucking I wish I had. Number two, and I think about this often, especially during the fall. I wish I ran out with the troopers at West Point.
Oh,
I wish I had led the West Point team out.
That was cool. I did that.
The last is, I never got a chance to ride with my son.
Uh,
I should have did it. I had opportunity. Now he's in the back room. I wish I had the opportunity to ride with him when he was a trooper. We worked the same stations. Actually, he started the same station in D, then E, then A. So I just wish I had that opportunity to ride with him. You know, as I told you, I'm 4 generations law enforcement. I'm most proud of the 4th.
Well, we wish your son safe passage as we do for all law enforcement out there from every agency. We wish your son a safe and a prosperous career, and not that he has a lot to live up to with his old man.
First of all, he scored 1 on the sergeant's list. I didn't score near that.
Yeah,
I got by on contacts and bullshit.
Yeah, as we all do.
Kid.
It really means the world to us to have you on the show, as Jay said, and your time is extremely valuable, and we realize that. And at some point, maybe down the line, we hope you'd consider coming back on for some other commentary, because you're just such a great fit to this podcast and such a tremendous asset to our agency. And guess what? guess what, Steve? You were the fucking superintendent. We consider you the superintendent. So regardless of what they did in Albany,
Champ, the people's champ.
the people's champ, absolutely. So we're very thankful. Jay, what do you got?
Oh, well, I have the old, let's make sure that everybody, you're thinking I know what you're thinking, but I want everybody, this is going to be an awesome episode if we can get everybody to like, share, comment, do all that good shit to get us some, a little bit more push. But I personally would make my fucking day if the one and only Steve NIGRELLI would say the one phrase that I want him to say. No one fucking cares.
Go Bears. No one fucking cares, bro. No one
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right. That's fine.
And go Bills.
And go Bills. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time. This has been an honor.
And Steve, stay on after this. Just stay on after this ends because we want to talk to you afterward too. So yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys.
Safe travels, everybody.